We are at the Square Patton and Box here in Washington, D.C. We have Mr. Frank Smolly. Nice to have you here. Mr. Smolly is part of the discussion that we already have in the American Chamber of Commerce regarding to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And we were talk about this TPP agreement and the advantage they have for the region. First of all, what is the TPP? We know already what is the DR CAFTA in the Dominican Republic because we've been involved in the agreement for 10 years. And we have some, difference between we should make it, how much have we had from this agreement? How many things we have, or this agreement have left for the Dominican Republic, and now we have this agreement in front of us.
Right. Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here speaking with you.
Okay.
The TPP is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a regional trade agreement. It's a trade agreement that involves 12 countries, including the United States, Canada, Mexico, Japan, Vietnam, Singapore, Peru, Chile. The point is that all 12 countries combined represent 40% of the world's GDP. So this trade agreement opens up markets, it reduces trade barriers, it increases trade for these 12 member countries, and obviously, if you're not part of this club of 12 countries, you will be at a disadvantage relative to the advantages of the TPP, which I should add are greater than CAFTA.
What should we do in order to belong to this group of countries that already have signed for this agreement?
Well, there are a couple of things. The long-term thing that the Dominican Republic can do is to join the TPP. Okay. There are lots of other countries that want to join, so there's a long line: Colombia, Philippines, Indonesia, Korea, Taiwan. This is down the road. The DR or maybe all the CAFTA countries can join. But in the short term, TPP may be passed next year, later this year. It could go into effect the year after. There is a way for the Dominican Republic to have its interests protected and or expanded through the legislation that needs to pass through the U.S. Congress to implement the TPP. Okay. So in other words, the legislation not only implements that agreement, but it's possible to add other things in, including protection of the CAFTA benefits for the DR.
Okay, so both agreements can have in common some points that could be profitable for the country if we react in time and try to join in this important agreement.
Yes. Nobody knows for sure when this legislation will be acted on by our Congress, but as I say, it could be as early as later this year. If that's the case, then the DR needs to start reaching out to members of Congress, to members of the U.S. administration, and to seek ways that language can be inserted into the implementing bill to protect the DR, or in something called the Statement of Administrative Action. But either way, there's an opportunity, if the DR acts quickly, to get its interests taken care of.
Okay. What's the difference between the DR CAFTA and the TPP? If you will just say some major characteristic in between.
Okay, I'll give you one specific example in the sector of textiles and apparel, which is important to the DR. It's also important to one of those TPP countries in particular, and that's Vietnam. Okay. When TPP goes into effect, Vietnam will have duty-free treatment that the DR does not now have under CAFTA, and it will have favorable rules of origin that the DR will not have under CAFTA. Some of the bigger benefits will be phased in over time, but I think if the DR does nothing, they stand to be harmed by the advantage given to Vietnam under the TPP, which eclipses that of CAFTA.
Okay, so Vietnam then is going to be a strong competitor for us in the manufactured Well, you mentioned the textile. That's one of the strongest activities that Vietnam has.
Yes. So Vietnam has low labor rates, obviously. They will now have much better market access to the U.S. So the big U.S. suppliers like Nike or Under Armour may now see that there's a cost advantage to import from Vietnam as opposed to a CAFTA country like the DR.
Okay. So we're talking about a new window that we have, and that's in order to see Vietnam as a competitor. But if you want to see the part that is important for us to, let's say, export to some countries, like let's say, for example, it's not Vietnam, but could be other countries that are already part of this agreement.
Yes. Yeah, so the TPP, again, it's 12 countries. So it's countries in Asia, but a lot of people think Pacific only being Asia, but Pacific also includes Mexico, it includes Canada, it includes Chile, it includes Peru. Okay. The United States already has some free trade agreements with those countries, but overall, the impact of the TPP will be quite positive for those countries that belong to it.
Okay. What about the relations between United States and Dominican Republic? It will add some other benefits that we don't have actually right now with the CAFTA?
Well, I think that the perception of the Dominican Republic in the United States is still very, very good. I think most members of Congress continue to support CAFTA. For foreign policy reasons, Dominican Republic is an important ally. So the TPP shouldn't in any way be meant as a slight to the DR. It's just that CAFTA is now 10 years old, so those benefits are getting a little bit dated and they're a little stale. So sometimes a country like the DR has to be proactive and actually go out and expand their benefits. So that's what we're trying to do. Okay.
Let's go to a commercial break. We will be back with our guests. We're talking with Mr. Frank Smolly, who is the co-chairman, International Trade Practice. We are here at the Square Pattern Box during this program that the American Chamber of Commerce has for the Dominican Week. We're back with Mr. Frank Smolly. He's an expert for the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. What can the Dominican Republic do while we are waiting, or we are in the process of the approval, finally, for the Congress of the United States? Well, actually, there's elections. Probably the new this president probably don't want to approve that agreement or want to leave. That Mrs. Clinton has that opportunity to implement that kind of agreement.
Yes, it's a very good question. Nobody knows when the legislation will be introduced. It's possible it could be introduced after our presidential elections, during what we call a lame duck session, which would be this year while Mr. Obama is still president, or it could be next year with a new president. Either way, there are things that the Dominican Republic can do and that its business sector can do. Because these trade agreements are legally not treaties, they have to be passed by our Congress and implemented into U.S. law. Okay. That law that needs to be passed is not necessarily limited to the four corners of the TPP agreement. The administration or Congress can add in other things. For example, they could add in some guaranteed protections for CAFTA benefits, or for the Dominican Republic. The likelihood is they will not do it on their own. They very well may do it if there's an organized effort to talk to members of Congress who are friendly with the DR, to talk to the administration, to raise the visibility of the interest of the Dominican Republic. CAFTA remains popular, and I think most members of Congress support it, as does the administration. But they won't focus on those problems unless the DR makes it an issue, and if they have the political support of members whose vote is being sought on the TPP to include those protections as part of their vote for TPP.
Okay, and we we Dominican Republic, we Dominicans see that kind of agreement so far, and we probably don't understand that much. But in order to start doing things that we can, let's say, prepare all the well, let's say the paperwork or put the house in order
Right.
to receive that kind of agreement. What do you think immediately in the next couple of months we can, let's say, do our homework to be prepared for that?
Sure. Well, this is a good opportunity this week, Semana Dominicana in Washington.
Okay.
You have the opportunity to meet with members of Congress.
Okay.
You have the opportunity to educate them a bit on
Okay.
how CAFTA could be injured or the benefits could be diminished because of TPP. So the DR should not assume that every member of Congress understands the implications of TPP for other agreements. So now you have the opportunity to tell your story to members of Congress and to have them understand that doing something in this TPP bill to protect the DR and CAFTA is very important for a number of reasons. So if you can do that this week, that's a big start in accomplishing what you need to do.
Let's say we can sensibilize them and say we want to be protected because our industry can be damaged if we are not in the new agreement. Vietnam can be harmful for us if we are not prepared
Right.
to compete with that kind of countries that have a very low labor. And tell about the story that we have some sectors that are growing right now that are taking a lot of maturity. For example, the rum, the agriculture
Yes.
production, the tobacco production. We have a lot of things that are. We are the leader right now as a tobacco producer in the whole world.
Yes, so those sectors need to get organized. Your government needs to hear from all those sectors as to what the important priorities are, because you have to have an organized message, a coordinated message. You need to establish the priorities, and that's where the government of the Dominican Republic, through its ambassador here, was very good, and his staff was very good, can help you to craft that message and get that placed before members of the U.S. Congress.
Okay, and maybe get the right counseling, because we need to be oriented how to do things in order to take advantage of that. Probably, I think the ambassador probably is seeking some counseling locally here to take it to the Dominican Republic, get the approval probably from the new president. We're going to have a new government right now.
Yes,
It's
well,
the same one, but
well, it's important for the DR to be organized. The other reason is other countries are doing this. Other countries like the Philippines or Taiwan or Colombia are all sort of coming up with their strategy.
they are ready.
Yes, so it's not too early for the DR to get engaged, and I think they have started getting engaged, but this is a critical time. Even though we don't know when the bill will be introduced, it could be very soon. And you don't want to be behind the learning curve when it
Yes.
comes to this legislation, so it's always better to be prepared.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Smolly, and I wish that to see you in the Dominican Republic probably sooner or later, talking about this interesting agreement, and have the Dominicans learn a little bit about the TPP, that we have it, as you said, in front of us in the next couple of months.
Right. Thank you for having me. It's
All
been a
right.
pleasure.
Thanks to you for your time and the opportunity. We will be back in a few seconds. Keep with us. We are in the Dominican Week here at Washington, D.C.